You asked about computing the seasonal indexes. I'll walk you through pages 195 to 197 of your textbook. Here we have 3 years of data. Quarters are 12, and they are each given a time period. So we have 12 time periods, 1 through 12, which are each associated with these quarters of these years. The data is given to us over here. This is demand, and the way we want to deseasonalize the demand based on what your book says is essentially it's called a centered moving average. Now when you're doing a centered moving average, depending on whether you're working with odd number of seasons or even number of seasons, the procedure is slightly different. In this case, we're working with even number of seasons, right here as the tab indicates. So with this data, we're working with quarters. We have 3 years of data, 4 quarters in every year. Those are the periods that repeat themselves. Therefore, we have 4 seasons. Because 4 is an even number, what we do is add 1 to 4 and we get 5. So we're going to be averaging 5 quarters at a time. If you want to average 5 quarters, here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The number that appears right in the middle is the 23,000. So I'm going to put my cursor across from it under deseasonalized demand and do the calculation for that. Now the way we do it, here's our 5 numbers. I'm going to give the first one a weight of 1. I'm going to give the first one a weight of 1. I'm going to give the fifth one a weight of 1. And I'm going to give everything that's in the middle a weight of 2. This is the procedure that your book discusses. So everything in the middle gets a weight of 2. So I'm going to do my analysis right in this cell, which is the middle cell. And so I'm going to set it equal to 1 times 8,000, so D3, plus 2 times everything 2 times everything which is red, so 2 times the summation of these numbers, plus again 1 times the 10,000, which is gets a weight of 1. Now everything in the middle was given a weight of 2, so 3 of them times 2, that's 6, plus 1 weight for 8,000 plus 1 as the weight for 10,000. That gives us a summation of 8 altogether. So this whole summation that I wrote must be divided by 8. Essentially, I'm calculating a weighted mean or a weighted average. So using this method, the number that you divide by, which in this case is 8, is always going to be twice the number of even number of periods that you have. In this case, we had 4 periods, so 2 times 4 is 8. Now here's another method that I like better myself. I don't know why your authors do it twice twice the weight. Here's how I do it. I just give the numbers in the yellow a weight of 0.5. Plus, again, the number in the yellow, the 10,000 is given a weight of 0.5, so half the weight of the red numbers. And then I add to it all the numbers in the middle. So each of those are all the numbers in red get a weight of 1. So I have and then I need to divide the whole thing by 4. So the reason why I divide by 4 in this case is because my number of periods is 4. And this is the yellow is given a weight of half. This is given a weight of half, so that's 1 altogether. Numbers in the red are given a weight of 1 each, so that's 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. So in this, using this method that I have, you get the same number as the authors do, but it's easy to remember that you're always dividing by 4, or by, in this case 4, or always you're dividing by the number of seasons that you have in your analysis. So I can copy that, each of these formulas down, it doesn't matter, and you should get the same answers. Of course, you will get the same answers. And notice that, and at this point I'm going to just erase all of this. That was just for your information. I don't want to confuse anyone. If you like to stick with the books method, be my guest. But over here, notice I stop at this period. And the reason why I stop at this period is the last number, demand that I've used is demand for time period. I'm sorry, it's cell D14. And cell D14 is this data value right here, which is my last data value. So essentially my analysis must end here at this period because my actual data values, demand values, end at that point, and I cannot calculate the deseasonalized demands any further. Now, according to your book, then you use this deseasonalized demand that you've calculated, that array, as Y range, and you use the matching corresponding T values under time period as X range, and you run regression analysis with it. So I have done that. I have ran regression analysis using the time periods 3 through 10 as X, and I have used the seasonalized demand 3 through 10 as Y variable range, and I came up with this regression equation right here. Now notice that the values are, I'll highlight them for you, is 18,439 rounded, oops, 18,439 and 524 rounded. And those are the numbers that your book has used. Therefore, I will use the same two values. You will come here then, and you will write a regression equation to go ahead and compute down this deseasonalized demand regression column estimated deseasonalized demand. So it was 18,439 plus, and that is your level, or that's your point of intercept, plus 524 times the time period that we have. And if I do that, and because the book has used these rounded values, I'm going to use these rounded values rather than clicking on those cells down below here, because if I use these values right here in my analysis, my estimates are going to be somewhat different than what your book shows, and I don't want to confuse anyone. Okay, so we get these values that if you now look on page 197 of your book, that top table, you'll get those same matching values. Now, what your book says is go ahead and compute seasonal factors, and the way you compute the seasonal factors is you take the actual demand for any given time period and you divide it by the deseasonalized regression demand. And then if you copy that down, you will get all of these seasonal factors. Now, the good thing about the reason why we went through this regression process is so that for every data value that we have, and we had 12 data values, we would come up with a deseasonalized, matching deseasonalized value. That way we'll be using all of our data in our analysis. Okay, the seasonal factors are given here. Again, your book rounds them off in further analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and use the rounded values that your book uses, that your authors use, so that we get the same answers. So notice, for quarter 2, 3, 4, and 1, we have your book is seasonal index. Your book is using these these symbols: S1, S2, S3, and S4. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that same method just so that I'm not confusing anyone. If it were me, I would say this is S2, seasonal index for quarter 2, and this would be S3 for quarter 3. But your book uses this notation, so I'm going to stick with it again so that I'm not confusing anyone. Okay, so how do we do that? Let me go ahead and de-highlight this. All right, so here's quarter 2, seasonal index 1 that we want to compute. Let's see how many quarter 2s we had. Here's a quarter 2, here's a quarter 2, and here's a quarter 2. Their seasonal factors are 0.42, 0.47, and 0.52. So all of those I'm going to highlight so you can see them clearly, so you'll see what we're doing. So this number right here is going to be a yellow number that I'm going to compute, and this is going to be equal to average of 0.42 and 0.47. Oops, I don't want to do that, because if I do that, Excel is going to compute it based on the numbers that are written. Your book is averaging that rounded off figure, so that's what I need to do, is equal to 0.42 plus 0.47 plus 0.52, and then all of that is divided by 3, and the book gets 0.47. Now let's see, quarter 3 is of course matched up with 0.67, 0.83, and 0.55. So if I highlight those in a different color now, and do the same color here, you can see that I need to calculate that by doing a summation of the 0.67. Oops, again, I keep forgetting, I need to add the 0.67 plus the 0.83 plus the 0.55. Again, I want to use the rounded off figures that your authors use so that we end up with the same answers as the authors do. So I need to average that and divide by, oops, 0.467. Oh, I'm using a comma instead of a point. Okay. So if I do that, I get 0.68. Now you see all of these are matching up with what you see on page 197 towards the bottom of the page where all the seasonal indexes are computed. And of course your book is rounding them off again to 2 decimals. So the next ones, I'm not going to go ahead, I'm not going to calculate them for you, but off of the book we get 1.17, and for next one we get 1.67. And so then you can see that your authors are saying for now, for time period 13, how do we do our computation of our forecast? Our forecast is going to be, our forecast for time period 3 is going to be our regression estimate, which is deseasonalized. So that would be the 18,000, what was the number? I forget. 18,439 plus the 524. I want to make sure I got that. Yeah, 524 times 13. Times 13. So that right there gives me the estimated demand, but deseasonalized, but I need to seasonalize it, so I'm going to come back and multiply it by this 0.47, which is the seasonal index for quarter 2. So you get 11,868, which is what the book comes up with towards the bottom of page 197. So that was the process for even periods, which is a little bit more involved than odd periods. So let's go ahead and now assume that this